Pork is one of the most widely consumed meats globally, a staple at celebrations, barbecues, and in traditional dishes. Yet, many people aren't aware of the various reasons to avoid it. Health concerns, hygiene issues, cultural factors, and even spiritual beliefs all contribute to an old, but increasingly relevant, debate. In this discussion, we'll reveal some surprising facts and information about this highly controversial animal. Pigs are known for their indiscriminate diets. Unlike other animals, they consume almost anything they find, from food scraps to garbage and feces. This directly impacts the quality of their meat. Even with modern, controlled farming practices, a pig's body rapidly absorbs toxins from what it consumes, and some of these can be transferred to those who eat the meat. This is one of the biggest criticisms from those who advocate for removing pork from human diets. Another interesting point is the similarity between pig and human DNA. This has been confirmed in various scientific studies and even leads to parts of the animal's body being used in experimental transplants. However, this also sparks a discussion about the impact of consuming this meat on our health. Are we eating something our bodies recognize differently? Some researchers warn that, due to this genetic similarity, our bodies might react when ingesting certain components of pork. Furthermore, pork is notoriously high in fat. Even cuts considered lean contain a higher fat content than other meats. Frequent consumption can lead to increased bad cholesterol, heart problems, and weight gain. This doesn't even account for popular cooking methods like frying and processed meats, which amplify the risks. Products like bacon, ham, and sausage are rich in sodium and preservatives, potentially triggering serious long-term illnesses. Another less discussed fact is the presence of parasites. Pigs are primary hosts for tapeworms and trichinella, dangerous worms for humans. Even with thorough cooking, these organisms can survive and cause severe infections. There are medical reports of individuals whose brains or other organs were compromised due to consuming contaminated meat. For these reasons, many doctors and specialists recommend avoiding this type of food or exercising extreme caution during preparation. From a religious and cultural perspective, pork is also viewed with reservations. In religions like Islam and Judaism, pork is considered impure and forbidden. In early Christianity, many followers also avoided pork due to its association with spiritual impurity. These customs reflect a centuries-old concern that extends beyond health, entering the realm of consciousness and inner purity. It's interesting how different cultures, even without direct contact, arrived at similar conclusions about this animal. In intensive farming, another problem stands out: the excessive use of antibiotics to prevent common diseases in overcrowded and unsanitary environments. Many farmers administer excessive medication. This results in meat containing residues that can affect the immune system of those who consume it. Additionally, this practice contributes to the rise of bacterial resistance globally, making medical treatments increasingly less effective. A fact that might shock many is that pigs don't sweat. This means they don't eliminate toxins through sweat like most animals. Impurities end up being stored in their bodies, including in their fat and meat. When this meat is consumed, some of these toxins can be absorbed by the human body. This biological characteristic is one of the main arguments for those advocating to keep pork out of our diets. Beyond physical issues, many people report feeling unwell or experiencing digestive symptoms after consuming pork. This might be related to the body's difficulty in processing certain components present in the meat. Cases of food allergies, reflux, and a heavy sensation are common. Therefore, naturopathic doctors and integrative nutritionists often recommend diets that exclude pork, prioritizing lighter and safer alternatives. It's also worth remembering that excessive pork consumption has environmental impacts. Pork production demands large quantities of water, feed, and space. Additionally, large-scale pig farming generates waste and polluting gases, contributing to environmental imbalance. Choosing to reduce or eliminate this meat from one's diet is therefore a decision that involves not only individual health but also the preservation of the planet. Beyond the risks already mentioned, it's important to understand that pork consumption doesn't just affect the physical body, but also has emotional and mental impacts. Studies in functional nutrition indicate that certain foods, rich in saturated fat and toxins, increase inflammation levels in the body. This silent inflammatory process can directly influence mood, contributing to anxiety, constant fatigue, and even depression. In other words, what we eat can directly affect our emotional well-being. Another aspect often ignored is the animal suffering involved in pork production. Pigs are highly intelligent beings, with cognitive abilities similar to those of a domestic dog. They recognize their owners, play, and feel sadness and pain. In industrial farming, these animals live in tiny spaces, without contact with nature, under severe stress, and are often subjected to mutilations. Those concerned with animal welfare find this factor another reason to avoid this meat. Historically, pigs have been linked to precarious hygiene conditions. For centuries, they were raised as recycling animals, feeding on scraps. This associated the animal with serious diseases. In ancient times, outbreaks of trichinosis and cysticercosis were common among populations that consumed poorly prepared pork. Even with modernization, the risk still exists, especially because consumers often have no control over the origin and handling of the food they buy. The preparation of pork also raises concerns. Many pork cuts require prolonged cooking to eliminate parasites and bacteria. However, in the rush of daily life, many people don't adhere to the ideal cooking time, which can result in undercooked meat. Furthermore, frequent consumption of processed meats like bacon and ham is linked to an increased risk of cancer. According to the World Health Organization, these foods fall into the same risk category as cigarettes and alcohol, something few people are aware of. From an ecological perspective, the environmental impact of pig farming is considerable. A single farm with thousands of animals produces an enormous amount of waste, which, if not properly treated, contaminates rivers, soil, and groundwater. Additionally, the gases generated such as methane and nitrous oxide are potent greenhouse gas contributors. Exacerbating climate change, reducing pork consumption is also a gesture toward planetary sustainability. In Eastern medicine, particularly traditional Chinese medicine, pork consumption is discouraged in some contexts. It's believed that this type of meat generates energy stagnation, hindering the flow of key vital energy in the body. It's considered a damp meat that can increase mucus and worsen allergies, bronchitis, and digestive problems. Even if you don't follow this philosophy, it's interesting to observe how different cultures warn about the same risks. Interestingly, in some regions of Africa and Asia, pork is avoided even by people who don't follow religions that prohibit it. This is due to a history of disease outbreaks linked to contaminated meat. In these regions, where the climate is warmer and refrigeration systems are not always efficient, the risk of food poisoning increases significantly. That's why, to this day, many populations maintain distance from this meat out of tradition and self-preservation. With the growth of movements like veganism and vegetarianism, more and more people are seeking alternatives to pork. Today, there are plant-based options that mimic the texture and flavor of bacon, sausage, and ham. These products are made with natural ingredients like soy, peas, chickpeas, and mushrooms, without harmful preservatives. In addition to being healthier, these alternatives respect animals and the environment. Another point that needs to be emphasized is the emotional and energetic burden involved in consuming pork. Some spiritual beliefs suggest that foods carry the energy of the animal's moment of death. Since many pigs die in a state of suffering and terror, this negative energy, according to these beliefs, would be absorbed by those who consume the meat. This could explain feelings of unease, insomnia, and even irritability after consumption. Finally, it's worth remembering that changing eating habits doesn't have to be a sudden, radical decision. Gradually reducing pork consumption, seeking cleaner alternatives, and understanding the real impacts of this food are already valuable steps. By choosing what we put on our plates, we are choosing health, ethics, sustainability, and even a deeper connection with our own bodies. Eating is a daily act and, therefore, one of the most important decisions we make.